Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at CaroltheCoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need.
Yes, absolutely. You heard it here. Is that what needs to happen? Does he want to change his life? You know, addicts come in all forms, all ages, races, sexes. We're dealing with more and more female sex addicts, or women with compulsive problematic sexual behavior. It is an epidemic. And I wrote in my book that I think, hands down, what has been most important in my work with sex addicts and partners is to help them change the way they think by really paying attention to their body and experiencing mindfulness. That has been so important. Now, many people think mindfulness, gosh, is that TM? What is mindfulness? And there are all forms of mindfulness, but I happen to get certified in an amazing mindfulness-based addiction and trauma therapy. And so today we're going to be interviewing Blaze Cosko. Maybe Cosko, I'll have to ask him. And he, too, uses this mindfulness-based trauma therapy with addiction. And what we both know is that it empowers, literally empowers people to understand their stories that they're telling themselves and find alternative practices that enable them to cope in a more skillful way. We teach skillful sets. And so what I love about this work is that people end up feeling so empowered. Blaze has been working in this field for many years. I know he's worked for the Mindfulness Center for over 5 years. And his primary population happens to be addicts. My primary population gets to be both because I work with couples, right? And so I teach them really important mindfulness sets. And when you have skillful sets, you're much more able to change the way you think about things, and then things around you change. So today we're going to be talking to Blaze, who's going to be dialoguing with me about how impactful this work has been. So, Blaze, welcome to Sex Help with Carol the Coach.
Thank you, Carol. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it really is. And you've taken the certification course, and I took the certification course, and you are lucky enough to work at one of the mindfulness centers, maybe even two, for all I know, that practices these concepts day in and day out. So I bet you feel really blessed.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Tell me a little bit about the MBATT approach. That stands for, well, first of all, it's MBATT, and it stands for Mindfulness-Based Addiction and Trauma Therapy. So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So it's essentially finding a way for us to think more skillfully versus unskillfully. So in other words, we might have this predisposition to tell ourselves certain stories that either lead to healthy or unhealthy outcomes. And of course, we want to do our best to be mindful of those stories and see if we could change them to be more beneficial to our recovery or our healing journey.
Mm-hmm. And they call that mindfulness. I was saying before you came on that a lot of people think of transcendental meditation when they think mindfulness. And although I took transcendental meditation too, this is much more engaging, much more interactive. It requires the person to be able to look at things a bit differently and understand, wow, that was an unskillful mind state. Or that is a mind story that I tell myself, but I could choose other stories work for me as opposed to against me. So would you do me a favor and give us an example of an unskilled mind story or state?
Sure. Well, one of the first that comes to mind would be the unskillful mind state of denial. And there's also a similar one that's known as delusional, and that's where we might at first be in denial of us having a problem or there being an issue in our life when there really is. And sometimes it could be very painful to admit that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's regarding addiction, especially if it's regarding betrayal, trauma, right? Something about our life has to change because right now it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So once we start to utilize mindfulness to be aware of that, then we could gain that insight and then start to change it to be more skillful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I remember having a conversation with Darren about this, the founder of his mindfulness centers and of TMAT and of the mindfulness based addiction and trauma therapy. This man is a genius. And I remember telling him that our guru, the man that started the CSAT program, Certified Sex Addictions Therapy, Dr. Patrick Carnes, said the one thing we need to break, first and foremost, when we're working with addicts, is their denial, and that it'll be an ongoing process. It's not like you break denial and you don't have to deal with it again, right?
Right.
And Darren said to me a very mindful thing. He said, well, I don't like to look at it as breaking denial. I do want to be curious as to how that denial might make the addict feel comfortable, might make the addict stay in a place that feels safer, because we all know that sometimes when we practice empowering skill sets, it's unfamiliar, and no one has ever encouraged us to do that. And I remember he and I talked about the clinging mind state. And, you know, if you are clinging, and I bet this resonates with a lot of addicts out there, if you are in clinging mind state, you know something is bad for you, like your addiction, like your cocaine, like your drinking, like your sexting, but you hold on to it anyway. It's like you refocus on what you're wanting from it, and you don't focus on the reality of all the destruction that it causes. And although that's a clingy mind state, that's also denial, because people have to be in denial to be able to cling to something that's really, really harmful for them. Tell me a little bit about utilizing the MBATT approach in terms of one's thinking.
Right. So on a daily basis, we go about our lives, and we might tell ourselves and others certain stories, and the first step would be to see what theme that story represents. So in this case, it could be clinging, right? We're clinging on to something that at least relieves us of some sort of pain or discomfort in the moment. It's more so a short-term solution, of course, with addiction or with some of our other tendencies. And it's just important to first identify it. And then we could start to practice another skillful alternative. And of course, I don't mean for us to simply say, oh, like now you have nothing to cope, right? It's a gradual process. It definitely takes time and trust in ourselves to make that a reliable habit in the future.
Yeah, I think that is why it is so important for people in recovery to have support groups. Because truly, how many times have you heard, just in terms of addiction in general, that was my best friend. Porn was my best friend. When I got bored, I used pornography. When I was angry, I self-soothed and used pornography. And when you say over and over to yourself, pornography is my best friend, of course you don't want to let go of it. Of course you cling to what is your best friend. But when you develop substitute habits and behaviors that are equally healthy for you, such as fellowship, support, groups. Patrick Carnes said, the best thing you can do for an addict, Carol, is develop a therapy group so that they have each other to talk to and work out these problems and support each other. And those then behaviors end up becoming more important than the actual activity that was disturbing the relationship, destructive in that it was taking away time from your workplace. You know, I know you know this, that most definitely men, I don't know about women, but men look at porn more often in the day during the workday than at night, which you would think, oh, no, it's when their wife goes to sleep or it's when they don't have anything to do. But truly, a compulsive behavior happens when you need it most. And I think business and work and things like that can be really, really stressful. So it helps to interrupt the stress of a normal day. But that's the problem, right? It interrupts the normal functioning of one's day.
That's absolutely spot on. And again, when it comes to unhealthy behaviors or mentalities that we might develop, right, we also want to understand the origin of it and see, well, yeah, it might be my best friend. But also it reminds me of this other mind state that's also unskillful, the mind state of aversion, where at the end of the day, there could be an aversion towards that pain, that discomfort, that sadness, that loneliness, whatever it is. You know, it's like the two go hand in hand. And that's why with the MBATT approach, over time, we start to develop more skillful ways of addressing all of these factors.
Well, and really part of both what Blaze and I do is that we look at mindful stories that one tells oneself in the midst of problematic behavior, and also what are those mind states. And we just talked about three. We talked about denial, and we talked about clingy, and we talked about aversive, and then you just mentioned it for a second when you said delusional, right? And what's the other one?
Let's see, there's denial, delusional, clinging, aversion, and judgmental.
Oh, a favorite of all addicts, for sure. And so with those mind states, which are unskillful, they actually work against you. They feel safe, they feel predictable, but they actually work against one's integrity. There comes mind stories. And the mind story might be, my acting out behavior is my best friend. Or it might be, I don't like myself, and so I'm going to continue to do things that remind me that I don't like myself. And self-loathing becomes part of that cycle. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about what some of the skillful mind states are. Blaze,
Absolutely. So one of the first ones that come to mind that are skillful would be the mind state of curiosity. And again, when it comes to curiosity, this is where we could incorporate mindfulness in so many different ways. Curious about the different thoughts we might have, the feelings, sensations, curious about why our behaviors or mannerisms are the way they are and what they are doing. And once we start to gain that curiosity, then we could more easily spot what's going on. Like, is this an unskillful mind state that I've been maintaining for these past few years or these past few months, right? How long has this been an occurrence for me? What happens if I were to cease this behavior? Is it a problem? Is it not? What's going to arise within me, and how do I get those needs fulfilled?
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's interesting you say curiosity because I'm a therapist of 44 years, but I'm also a coach. And my coach training is to be curious about everything. It keeps us out of that that judgmental state. It makes us non-judgmental because we're just curious about how people got where they got and what they might do differently. And so that is really a mindfulness skill that any of you can use if you're listening to this podcast. The next time you want to become judgmental and put yourself down, you can say, well, I'm curious as to why I might have done that and what else I might do instead. And just that flip of the word curious can take you into a place where you have more power to make helpful changes. And actually, as Blaze and I both know, to travel that pathway, the isomorphic pathway to self-intimacy. And when you do self-intimacy and you give yourself constructive compassion, wow, you're much healthier in dealing with distress, like an addiction or self-loathing. And it's a reminder to figure out what you might do to be kinder and gentler to yourself. Now, we're talking addicts right now, but partners can do the same thing. Can they not?
That's absolutely correct. Everyone could benefit from this approach.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when you have a partner who has been in an unsafe situation because they love somebody who's been deceitful and dishonest and done things that were inconceivable and deceptive, partners don't know what they can trust, and they don't trust themselves. And so mindfulness is really a wonderful way of learning new skill sets that say, you know what? You can trust yourself. You can rebuild your intuition. You can have gratitude for what's in your life that is working, even though this over here doesn't look like it's working. So share some more of those skillful mindsets, because I just mentioned one, didn't I?
Yes. So far we mentioned the curiosity mind state. There's also, I would say there's also the empathetic mind state that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And this essentially is a big part of course, Help or Heal, right?
Yes.
Which I'm quite familiar with.
Oh, thank you.
And, yes. And, you know, it could be quite powerful for, in this case, the addict. to work on developing that skillful mind state of empathy, to really understand all the factors that have contributed to this betrayal and also what led to them down this path, but also with a word of caution to not go down that shame spiral, right? Because that would be even more aversion, right, if we were to go down that unskillful pathway, right? So that's, of course, why I encourage this work to be done in a therapeutic setting and also with the appropriate fellowship and support system and, of course, coping tools.
Well, and help her heal as well as help them heal believes that if the person with problematic compulsive behavior can sit with partner and create some safety that was absolutely shaken at the time of discovery or shaken at the time of another slip or relapse, if they can sit there with him or her, that there is something healing about that. And if they can acknowledge that they caused the pain or that the past addiction caused the pain or the past behavior caused the pain, it reminds the partner that the addict hasn't forgotten. And that is very healing. So both of those books say when the addict gets better with sitting with the partner and helping them to heal, then the addict feels better and it's restorative in terms of self-esteem. So it's a win-win process. But oftentimes we have to teach people who have dealt with addiction their whole life how to do that differently as well as how to sit in that distress. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. That's entirely correct.
You know, Blaze, you've been doing this for a long time, and you've seen patterns of self-sabotage. And
yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that and how can it be addressed to deal with the relapses and the slips?
Right. So I also acknowledge that when I'm only one portion of the journey, that this journey of addiction and recovery has likely started from childhood or earlier on in someone's life. So by the time that they come here to me for treatment, right, they've likely had a lot of consequences already and a lot of patterns. And essentially it's my job to help bring awareness, of course, curiosity and insight to them to see, okay, what are the patterns and how could we work on addressing them? And typically the origin of these patterns has to do with a lot of maladaptive behaviors based on our emotional reactivity. Right? So, you know, it all comes down to emotions, like logically, like this wouldn't be something that is good for the marriage, of course, or is sustainable, like when it comes to addictive behavior, right? We already know that. And it's really about us trying to fill this need in a healthier way. So, of course, it's important to acknowledge what are those patterns, right? Is it us, you know, like when we're isolated, we become more susceptible? Is it because we think we could do this on our own, right? Is it because, did we justify it in some other way, right? So self-sabotage can occur in different ways, even in cross addictions or other substitutions. Like when it comes to, I've seen like gambling or overspending or alcohol, substances, right? Other ways we might try to cope, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And, you know, oftentimes therapy in and of itself is reintroducing or perhaps introducing for the first time values and an orientation of what is important to you. And many times men and women have not been asked that question or encouraged to put that together. I know that I do the intimacy pyramid with a lot of my couples, which says, you know, if you were going to develop the rungs of that intimacy pyramid, what would the first thing need to be for you to stay in your marriage and feel good about yourself? And for a partner, she will say, or he will say, honesty, transparency, and truth. And so that's the bottom rung. They feel like, yes, if I have honesty and truth, I will be able to cope better because it's before me. It's not hidden from me. What do you think are some really important values that you're working with clients on to reset their integrity and who they want to be?
Right, and again, you mentioned a really good point with Urkham and the pyramid. I'm also familiar with that as well. It's very beneficial in couples. However, for the individual, what I would say would be, like, first off, values could change over time. And typically when it comes to addictive behaviors, ironically, those behaviors contradict those values. So that's where the shame cycle could also play a part. Otherwise, if we have behaviors that align with our values, then there's that sense of fulfillment, that positivity, that motivation, right? So some values that I've heard individuals say would include, of course, to have integrity, to be honest, to be reliable, right? To be a source of healing, a partnership in a marriage, right? And any relationship, to have that unity and to work on healing. Mm-hmm. So I would also just say, when it comes to values, this could also be, it could be aligned with our passions, our hobbies on an individual level, mm-hmm. right? We might have that value of creativity. We might have that value for knowledge or intelligence, right? We might have certain things we value, and I'd be curious if we could implement this part of self-care.
Well, you and I both know from Ford's isomorphic pathway to self-intimacy that when you're sitting in distress, what you should allow it to signal is gentler form of self-compassion. And so I'm always looking with my clients and saying, okay, now you can do that internally, you can do that externally. What would one thing you could do that would be healthy and would also take you out of the shame? Not necessarily permanently, but for a few moments that you get a breather and you're being more gentle with yourself. And they will say things like, go for a run, take a kickboxing class, listen to my favorite rock and roll, or classical for that matter, pet my puppy, take a bubble bath. It's all that external stuff that helps to bring down that reactivity so that the distress is more bearable. What do you tell the population you work with, primarily the addicts, what can they do internally to change that internal locus of control?
Right. So it's about showing them that the power that they still have, despite the unfortunate situation that's occurred, or even if there is reactivity that they have struggled with as part of their pattern, what they could do as the addict is, like what you mentioned, go for a run, go to the gym, and hiking, other self-care activities, maybe something that they used to do that they're really passionate about that they ended up forgetting, or, time took its course and life happens. Mm-hmm. So revisiting some of those things that maybe that inner child would really appreciate, and just to go back quickly to the curiosity mind state, right? Just being curious, what is that inner child saying, or what has that inner child said? What are some of the needs that we could work on getting fulfilled? And additionally, I would also just say there's another way to work on balance with ourselves, like ensuring that our eating habits are healthy, our nutrition, our hydration, our sleep hygiene, right? Having more structure in that way just helps it less likely, helps it helps ensure that we're less likely to slip into those old patterns.
Yeah, and Blaze is actually referring to the 8 domains of, I don't know, I can't remember.
Recovery,
the 8 domains of recovery. And, you know, they sound so simple. And I remember when I took the certification course, which if you are a professional, you're a coach or a therapist, and you're listening to Blaze and I talk, I said before Blaze even came on, it's single-handedly, mindfulness changes everything because it teaches gentle, constructive compassion. It really reduces the shame that's in all of us, and it helps form new behaviors that replace the compulsive. So if you're a coach or a clinician and you want this, I know we're a bit prejudiced, but truly the MBATT is such an incredible certification program. And you can go to Darren Ford's website. Do you have that on you?
Yes. You could go to specifically mindfulcenters.com.
Mm-hmm. And then that will take you to the certification. I want to say that there's also the TMAT.
Oh, yes, that's right, TMAT.
And so if you go to www.tmatt.com, you can sign up for the next certification program that both Blaze and I did. And it's online, so you don't have to live in California, which is where the mindfulness centers are. Are they all three of them in California, Blaze?
Yes. However, we do have a new location that is opening in Oregon and Texas.
Wow, that's amazing. So you can go and learn more about this. And I've been saying to Darren, who's the founder, and by the way, everybody, he also is the publisher of all my books. As if he wasn't busy enough, he publishes specifically books on addiction and partner betrayal for our community of learners, professionals, and our community of addicts and betrayed partners to get healthy again. And so Darren has really dedicated his life to not only teaching, but having you adapt to healthier mind skills and mind stories. So go to that website if you're a professional and you want to find out more about the teaching. You do it over a couple of, you probably do it over 4 to 6 different weekends. It's worth every amount of free time because the benefits that it weighs for our clients is incredible. We were talking about internal locus of control. And one of the things that I do, and for our listening audience, because I know a lot of you are addicts and betrayed partners, think about this. I want you to write down 2 sentences. Well, two beginning sentences. One is even though, and the other one is what I know to be sure, or what I know to be true. And so the even though is the reality of the situation. If I'm an addict, it might be, even though I had a slip, what I know to be true is that I am working diligently on my program, and I am going to be able to eventually be porn free. And for a partner, it might be, even though I had 12 triggers this week, because I've been documenting them, what I know to be true is the more mindfulness I practice, the healthier, the happier, and more stress-free I'll be. And so they're true statements, but they show progress. They show encouragement, and they show capability, both for the distress and for the future. Now, I'm going to ask you, Blaze, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, They thought you sounded like the perfect therapist. They love your approach. How could they do that?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of ways. One way is to go to the website, mindfulcenters.com, and you will be able to create a profile and request to see me.
Okay.
Another way to get in touch with me would be through Psychology Today. I'm also advertised on that platform as well.
Okay, and I must admit, is it Cosko or Cosko?
Blaze Cosko.
Okay, but it's not spelled like the very famous Costco. It is Cosko.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget that name. I have a feeling Blaze is going to be doing some bigger things as he progresses at this mindfulness center, because that is another beauty of the work we do, is that it reminds us of the space within the gap, and that's when all sorts of exciting opportunities show up, when we're mindful and we're not dealing with so many racing thoughts and ruminations and obsessions and compulsions. It's just, again, another win-win. Do you have any projects in the future that you're thinking about doing? Because, when you say it out loud, you're more likely to make it happen.
Yes, just to solidify an IOP specifically for the betrayed partner. Again, I've mostly had a lot of experience working with the addict and running IOPs for them. We also provide that for the partner as well, more so.
Well, that's wonderful. So as we begin to wrap up, is there anything you would like our listening audience to know, whether it be addicts, partners, or the professionals that also listen to the show?
Yes, absolutely. I would just say, again, please do your best to be gentle with yourself and just understand that we need to be slow, be mindful, and give it some time to reflect on with your support system, with your therapist or coach. And it will take time, but we can do this. We can heal, and there could be a greater future for all of us. Don't give up.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. I love that. You knew my stuff just like you knew your own, so I appreciate that. And, would wish a dialogue like this anytime you feel like talking. So Blaze Cosko, thank you so much. Again, he is from the Mindfulness Centers out of California, and he believes in mindfulness-based addiction and trauma therapy. And that works specifically. It works for everybody, most definitely. But we really love it because it really helps addicts develop that new sense of perspective and partners to become empowered again. So thank you, Blaze. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much, Carol.
All right. Take care of yourself. Okay, so I am Carol Jurgensen Sheets. You've been listening to Sex Help with Carol the Coach. And as I say at the end of every show, there will only be one of you at all times. So fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. And, oh, by the way, thank you for all the well wishes. I mentioned a little bit of a calamity I had last weekend. And I got so many emails from so many of you that I don't even know, but you listen to the show. And then several emails and texts from people I've worked with in the past. So it is all good. And I feel that energy and I appreciate it. I had no idea. And I really do want you to have the courage to be yourself. We'll see you next week for more Sex Help with Carol the Coach.